And I got to ask you, like, when's the last time? I'm guessing, as an MMA fan, like, I haven't been this hyped for a card since 2018. And I think that it's the same for you, Jacob. Is it the same for you? When's the last time you've been this hyped for a card? Have you ever been this hyped for a card?
I'm a little bit biased. I'm a little bit biased because obviously the Leon Usman was obviously a big deal for us Brits to have another
For
title
sure.
shot since Darren Till. But in terms of just a UFC card, yeah, I got to say 2018 was the last time I was this hyped. I mean, but just like the amount of possibilities, what could like happen after this card? There's so many different storyline possibilities. It's like so much to get your head around. So it is crazy.
Uh-huh.
This amount of raw potential in this card, like raw talent, like former
There,
champs.
there's a ton of potential in this card.
It's
Lots of
crazy.
potential.
I have a question
You,
before the
yeah.
card. Like before we talk about that card, what were you like when Leon head kicked to Usman? By the way, like what were you like? Did you turn it off before that? Like what was it like?
I was going crazy. So I happened to be working a late shift that day, so I was up anyways at that time because it happens at like 5-6 a.m. UK time. Oh my god, it was just like it's like an out of body experience. You just never thought it's just not real. Like I didn't get to watch Bisping become champ live, but watching Leon become champ live, that's my favorite moment I've ever seen in sports, like ever. It's crazy. Like to give context, Leon lives like 15 minutes away from where I used to. Like it's like, so he's like a local guy for us. It's absolutely like seeing Leon win is the craziest thing. Like even now I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. That post-fight speech it's crazy. It's crazy.
Fuck, man. I can only imagine. That's like someone growing up in my hometown, becoming a UFC champion. You relate to them so much. And I'm sure that
down
was
the road.
that was man. I remember like I was speechless for 10 minutes straight. No, a lot of people probably screamed. I didn't scream. I was just speechless when it happened.
I was so happy. Like
it didn't look real. It didn't look real at all.
It didn't look real. That was the craziest thing.
Well, here's a good thing to ask, leading into the convo UFC 280, which fight do you guys think has potential to give some shock factor, to have an element of shock? And obviously that's only going to be with the bigger fights. I'm sure there are some cards or some fights on the prelims that'll have some entertaining outcomes. But what fight do you think is most likely for there to be, whether it's an upset, a crazy KO, a wild finish, an absolute war? What do you guys think?
Yeah, for me, I think it could be Sean O'Malley knocking out Peter Yan.
Yeah,
like that would give us a moment where or even if he did in the third round or something, like he's losing and stuff, and he just knocks out Peter Yan out of nowhere. I think that would give us like a wow factor. I also think Charles knocking Islam out cold is a realistic thing that would give us like a crazy wow factor. You know what I mean? Like we'd be going crazy. Like we all, I mean, I don't know about you, but we picked Charles to win by first round TKO. But if he knocked Islam out cold, I think everyone would be in shock.
No, that's a great pick. I was leaning more towards, I think, Sean. I mean, Charles by TKO is my pick. I got it in the second round, and I almost find it weird that more people don't have Charles as the favorite. It doesn't even seem to make sense to me. But I mean, I don't know. Like my brain tells me that there's no way that Sean beats Peter Yan. Like it doesn't make sense. But my heart is telling me that there's just that 1% chance, and we've seen it with Leon. The only way Sean wins this fight is by a crazy KO. Like, there's no way he pieces it. It has to be by a crazy KO. So I got that as well.
Yeah. I think the Sean KO is the most likely thing to like just shock us. You're right. Picturing Sean O'Malley just beating Petr Yan, a clean win. It's hard to picture, given how tough Petr Yan is. Given that Sean O'Malley hasn't actually been able to prove that he can hang with any of the top guys. I mean, we saw what he looked like against Pedro Munoz. It was almost as if he had finally met someone who he is, a little bit. He met a guy who could outgun him. And that's the thing. I saw a Sean O'Malley fighting Pedro Munoz, and he was a little gun shy. He was tentative. And if you're going to tell me that Sean O'Malley is then going to go out in there and put it on Petr Yan when he couldn't do shit to Pedro Munoz, I just don't believe that. I don't think that's going to happen. That being said, Sean O'Malley, if he catches Piotr clean on the jaw with one of those shots that would just put anyone out, like the Leon head kick, anyone goes out if that hits them. If Sean O'Malley can hit Piotr Jan with something that flush, that would shock me. And I think that really would be the biggest statement of the card. But man, the main event, I mean, you're right. If Charles Oliveira is able to knock out Islam Makhachev, that's huge. Now, I personally would be more impressed by seeing him submit Islam Makhachev. I think that'd be a bigger statement because he'd be beating Makhachev at his own bread and butter. I think if, here's the thing, if Makhachev is able to submit Charles, I'll be impressed as well. But for some reason, I feel like I'll be less impressed. And I feel that's kind of my bias. I think that's my bias. That's a ding on me, because when I picture Islam Makhachev winning this fight, I have to give him all the credit logically, rationally, but I feel like it just won't impress me. And maybe that's just testament to how good I really think he is, and my respect for Khabib's legacy and all of that. I mean, I don't know. Do you guys get the same sense? Like, if Islam wins, it'll just be like, whatever. Like, it's not that. I mean, it is what it is.
I feel that's the best way of saying it. It feels like if Islam's going to win, it's just going to be one of those, like, it is what it is. It's just like we had a fun break with Charles as champion, but we just get back to what it was before almost.
Exactly. I think that
I want to see another Khabib. It's just not like, I just don't think there's that many interesting Islam fights if he wins. I mean, like, who's he gonna fight? Like,
I would love to see Islam face Beneil Dariush or Mateusz Gamrot. But if you look at that fight in and of itself, in my opinion, and I was making a prediction video of the full card, the Beneil Dariush and Mateusz Gamrot fight is the sleeper fight on the card. I think that is a amazing fight, and I think that's going to showcase some extremely high level grappling. And the way I described it is, like, there's almost two lightweight divisions. There's the lightweight division, the red carpet division with Dustin Poirier, the stars, Justin Gaethje. You got Charles Oliveira as a part of it, and I guess Islam Makhachev's now a part of it. But then you got the guys backstage. You got the guys that are really going at it. These monsters that are being created in behind the scenes. Mateusz Gamrot, you have Arman Sarukian, you have Guram Kutateladze, and I think that Beneil Dariush may even be a part of that crowd. I can't wait to see that fight because I honestly don't know who wins. And to me, I mean, I don't know. I could talk about that fight all day. Who do you guys favor with Beneil Dariush and Mateusz Gamrot?
For me, coin toss.
You got it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a coin toss. I got Beneil, but it's probably the closest one of a card. I mean, I'm working on a video right now doing my picks in terms of betting for a card, and this is one of those fights where I would never put my money on. It just feels like it's gonna go either way, but it's gonna be incredibly entertaining to watch from a fan perspective. But it really is a coin toss. I got Beneil for nothing more than just I watched Beneil, and for longer I understand he's got. It's a less of an aggressive style of grappling, which leaves him less open to mistakes. But I think it's gonna be a real masterclass.
Yeah, I actually got Gamrot winning. I just think he's got more ways to win, and when I'm picking fights, I usually 95% of the time pick the guy who's got more ways to win. So I think if they're standing up, Gamrot has the advantage. I know Dariush has had some really wild, cool knockouts, but just like in terms of just like a pure striker, Gamrot's a better striker. And I think also Dariush's way to victory would be on the ground, and Gamrot's real elite on the ground too. So I don't even know if he has an advantage there. So I think if the grappling does cancel out, it's going to be a striking battle, and I think Gamrot pieces him up for 3 rounds.
You see, I just wanted to mention something. So you said that Gamrot has the better striking. Here's what I see. I think that Gamrot's striking is brilliant for a grappler because both of these guys have really weird, funky styles of striking. But Gamrot, his striking is really just to set up his takedowns. I mean, he has this, he throws a lot of looping punches. There's not a lot of power behind it. He doesn't throw with the intention to necessarily like hurt his opponent. And that's the difference with Beneil Dariush. Beneil Dariush throws with heat behind his punches. And again, they're both wild. They're both very unorthodox. Like, Mateusz Gamrot, when he's throwing strikes at you, they're coming from weird angles. He's usually shooting a takedown behind it. But then Beneil Dariush, like if it is on the feet, but Beneil Dariush has the power advantage. I think he's a little more explosive. You know, sometimes we get these wrestlers, like I know Ben Askren's not a great example because his striking was just terrible, but you have some grapplers or some wrestlers that just don't seem to have fast twitch, like muscle fibers when it comes to their striking. Like they're really strong in a grappling sense, but they're not explosive with their hands. But then you have guys like Michael Chandler who are, you know, grappling based, but have like a ton of explosiveness behind their shots. I think Beneil Dariush is going to be the more explosive guy. And that's why for me, I don't know who gets the better of who with the grappling exchanges. That's where it's very even, but the striking, I don't know, man, because I've seen Gamrot get outstruck by a lot of guys. I've seen him get outstruck by a lot of guys. So I don't know. I don't think his striking is that great. I don't know who to pick. As you said, like I wouldn't put money on that fight. That's why for me, it's the closest fight. It's the hardest fight to pick. Whereas I think even with the main event, there are some pretty clear outcomes, you know, Islam decision, Islam submission, you know, Charles finish. That one, I really have no idea. There's another fight that I wanted to bring up. This is, you know, Belal Muhammad and Sean Brady. Who are you guys picking? I'm picking Belal Muhammad in that fight. I think that he's got good wrestling. He can keep it standing. And I think Belal Muhammad is very underrated. And if we're going to talk about any guys that are underrated, I think there are two guys that are really underrated on this card. Aljamain Sterling and Belal Muhammad, in my opinion, are the two most underrated guys on this card. What do you guys think of that statement and Belal Muhammad versus Sean Brady? What do you guys think of that fight?
No, I agree, definitely. I mean, the Belal Muhammad versus Sean Brady fight, I think that's one of the more interesting fights on this card. I mean, the welterweight division is incredibly top heavy. I wouldn't say as top heavy as a heavyweight, but you know, you got your Usman, Leon, Colby, Hamza, and they're like just a tier above the rest. Mm-hmm. Like they're, you know, kind of a separate kind of crew from the rest of them, you know. And you know, you do have big names like Jorge and Gilbert Burns, but they're just not in that top tier. And I feel like Belal, his style is just kind of a kryptonite for a lot of those big guys. I mean, I think we can all agree here, but if we see Belal versus Jorge, I don't even think it's close. I think Belal dominates that fight. We see Belal versus, you know, a lot of these top guys. Like Belal's style is a kind of a kryptonite for a lot of these guys. That being said, Sean Brady's an incredible talent. He's obviously undefeated. Like he's no scrub. Like I'm not trying to say that, but I'm definitely leaning more towards Belal Muhammad.
Yeah, I've also got Belal. I think Sean. I mean, I think the grappling is gonna cancel out. Like I don't see Sean Brady taking Belal down. I mean, I could maybe see Belal taking Brady down. But if the grappling does cancel out, which I think there's a real high chance it does, if it's on the feet, I mean, Belal is better on the feet. You know, I think he's got more to offer. He's got a little bit more power, stuff like that. So I'm definitely picking Belal to win in a boring decision win.
He's got a gas tank too. Belal Muhammad, he's got a gas tank. And like, again, for a lot of these strikers, at least, you know, Vicente Luque, I picked Vicente Luque in that fight and Belal proved me wrong. You know, I saw Belal be able to just dominate a guy like Wonder Boy. Granted, he was a little older. And I was thinking, you know, Vicente Luque has got decent grappling as well. He's really strong, but Belal, you know, beat him really, really convincingly. And he outstruck him in a lot of moments in that fight. He's got some really good weapons on the feet. He's got a fast kick to the body. And I think that he doesn't get tired and he moves a lot. He moves quite a lot around the octagon. So I don't know. I mean, we've talked on this podcast about Sean Brady being one of the, like, we think he's the most boring fighter on the roster, aside from Israel Adesanya. I think, yeah, I mean, I think Sean Brady, I honestly, you say he's undefeated, he's not a scrub. I think he's closer to the scrub status than people really believe. I think he's a little overrated. I mean,
he hasn't beaten anybody good. That's the thing. Like, who is Sean Brady beat?
You know, Michael Chiesa, but
he almost lost. He almost got knocked out in the third round in that fight. You know, like he gassed out.
And you know, I just think his striking isn't where it needs to be in order to be able to swim with the big fish in that division. But you're right. Now that you mentioned it, it is a very top heavy division. Like, there are guys like Neil Magny who in my opinion, I don't think he's that great, and I don't know. I think like maybe it's just that we're spoiled with certain divisions like lightweight, bantamweight. If you think about it, a lot of these divisions are pretty top heavy. Volkan Ozdemir is another guy who's fighting on this card. I think he's pretty overrated. And I mean, I don't know how he's still necessarily ranked. But who do you guys think the most underrated fighters are on this card?
On this card?
Yeah.
That's a tough one, because I think that your take you said originally about Aljamain Sterling, even though he is a champion, I think it's a very valid take, because we can say what we want about the first time he got the belt, but he did defend the belt. He won that fight. I know it's a close fight, but he won the fight. He played a tactical game where he knew that he was ahead on the score sheet, and he almost like deferred in the later rounds. I personally disagree with that style of fighting from a sportsman's perspective. But a win's a win, right? A W's a W. But he's incredibly skilled. He's a very complete fighter, and he's competing in, arguably, this is my opinion, I think bantamweight's the most like entertaining and the deepest division in the UFC. So I think that he's competing in the hardest division, and he's the champ. So he still hasn't earned his respect for whatever reason. So I hope he gets it on Saturday.
Yeah, for me, it's also Aljo. I was rewatching the Peter Yan 2 fight, and on the feet, he's a lot better than I remembered, honestly. That first round, he was landing some good knees, some good elbows, stuff like that. Like he's got a lot to his game, He's very crafty, and especially on the feet, And I think his ground game is top notch. Like it's like we talk about Charles Oliveira, guys like that. Like he's up there for sure. Like that, when he gets onto your back, like that's it for the round, Like he's either submitting you, or the rounds he's going to be on there for the rest of the round. Like that's just how elite he is on the ground and in that position. So
yeah, he's really well-rounded, like super well-rounded.
Yeah, I honestly think that Aljo is honestly, like, if he gets another win, I mean, you could say he's top 4 pound for pound. Honestly, like, I don't mind that. I really don't mind that. I think Jared came on the other week saying Aljo is very underrated on that. And now I'm starting to really realize that too, Like,
but then you have to put, but I don't know top 4 though, because then you have to put him
in terms of talent, in terms of what he has to offer. I think he's top 4.
You think he's ahead of so that would be Izzy, then it'd be Charles, and obviously Volk. So who would be number 4?
I think
Usman.
I think he's in front of Usman.
Really?
He's got more talent. He's got more to offer than Usman. Like what does Usman have to? What is, like, what I mean? Like on the feet. Like,
no, I mean, here's the thing about the pound for pound list. The pound for pound list, as like, I really don't think it's fair to be like, have it be skill for skill, because then all the lighter guys are going to be at the top of it. But I look at it as resumes, like who have they beat? And Aljamain, I think you could make the argument that he could potentially move ahead of maybe Francis, maybe be right behind. I mean,
he hasn't been fighting either, Like,
yeah, that's a thing, that inactivity can get you to drop on that pound for pound list. But back to Aljamain, like, being underrated, I think that people clown him obviously because of the knee incident with Petr Yan, but and also the fact that he was getting a lot of his takedown stuff by Petr Yan. I mean, when your go-to and your plan A is to get takedowns, you get 20 takedowns stuffed. Like, that's something for people to clown you with. That being said, he's still incredibly well-rounded. I mean, he's probably the most dangerous guy in that division when it comes to the ground game. And his striking is actually really good. I mean, he was piecing up Yan in their first fight before the 3rd and 4th round. Yes, he got dropped in the first round, but that being said, he actually put it on Yan, and he landed at will in that fight. And again, we look at his fights, like him versus Pedro Munoz, and you compare that to Sean O'Malley's fight against Pedro Munoz. I mean, Aljamain Sterling absolutely dominated Pedro Munoz. He landed 187 strikes and was a 3-rounder. And if you look at his strike differentials, and we're not even talking about fights where he was landing lots of takedowns, he has massive strike differentials in a lot of his fights where he can make his opponents miss because he's really fast. He's not that easy to hit. And, I really think he's underrated. I think he's one of the most well-rounded fighters in the UFC. I just think people get too caught up into his fights with Petr Yan. Like, he's beat Yan once. That's great. And, Petr Yan is that good as well. Like, it's very rare that you have two fighters that are that good in the same weight class. But that's, it's really just an unfortunate circumstance because Petr Yan had a fight with him and beat him up the first time. And people have a hard time removing that from their memory. But I think Aljamain is going to run through TJ Dillashaw. I really do.